Our government already thought that we reached that 10% agreement already. And then suddenly President Trump just announced on his social media that we reached 20%. And so we were actually dumbfounded. But hey, 20% is better than 46%, and it is still lower than India and China. So
And what's India and China from your perspective?
I think India was, I don't remember exact number, but it's way more than 30%.
Yeah.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave.
Hey, Valerie, welcome back. Thank you for coming by Singapore for your Super Returns Week.
Yeah. Hi, Jeremy. So thrilled to be back here.
Yeah. So, as always, of drinking?
Quite a lot of drinking. Yeah.
It's just meetings, drinking, wake up, drink a lot of coffee, conference, meetings, and so forth.
I didn't go to the conference itself, but I did the side thing like coffee and drinking.
I mean, there's the meat and potatoes of it is actually all the meetings. For me, I'm the opposite. I was moderating a panel on, kind of like the private capital markets and the price and revaluation. So it was interesting to host kind of health capital, risk capital, and multiplicity partners, right? So interesting to talk and debate that in the morning.
How was it? How was the audience? How was the atmosphere?
I would say that obviously there's a panel and there's after panel conversations. And I think the panel conversation was really a lot of questions about whether the asset prices, secondaries, and whether that revaluation has really happened. And I think there's some acknowledgement that the private markets in Southeast Asia, the asset prices have started to reprice, I would say. So either flat rounds or down rounds, secondaries are happening. Previously, people didn't want to update the book value in a portfolio. So I think there was that part. And then after the conversation and panel, there's another set of conversations very much about Southeast Asia and the broader market. How about you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I would say a lot of entry price has been adjusted significantly. So the price that we are investing now as entry price is we entering as much discount compared to just 2 years, 3 years ago.
Yeah. And I think that's something that founders are seeing. They're seeing obviously longer processes for evaluation, longer due diligence processes, low prices, less competition for their fundraising rounds.
That's correct.
And how is it showing up in Vietnam from your perspective?
In Vietnam, our process for entering a new deal has been a bit longer.
Yeah.
So it took us about 5 months to close our latest investment, which is much longer than a few years ago. Yeah. So I can attest all of the comments from the founders that shared to you are correct.
What's interesting is obviously I think there's a conversation that founders are having and trying to understand within themselves what it's like. And then I think Super Returns, because it's a meeting between the limited partners and the general partners, is a very different set of conversations. It's much more, I would say, high level. It's much more finance oriented. And it's much more macro oriented. I think one big theme that I had was the big difference between last year's Super Returns and this year's Super Returns was last year, very high interest rates, very bearish winter in Southeast Asia, waiting for the new Trump administration to take over. And then this year, we see the Trump tariff policy has been a big macro shock to Southeast Asia. I think also now we're starting to see that the interest rates have been going to get cut for the first time. So I think there's a beginning of the end of this high interest rate era. Those are some of the differences between last year's Super Return and this year's Super Return.
I hope so. Especially if you talk about macro country-wise, Vietnam has been really aggressive in cost cutting. They have pumped a lot of liquidity to the market. So stock market and real estate have been all-time high in Vietnam. Not sure how much is that is fundamental, but that's how Vietnam is a bit different from other countries. We actually are ahead of the US in terms of lowering interest rates, giving more dovish kind of policy to the money.
Let's talk about that because, 1-2 years ago, Vietnam was in I think the burning furnace anti-corruption campaign. There's a winter internally from the market. And now, of course, it's, like I said, an all-time high. That's a problem for this topic. It's like it changes all the time, right? So what's going on Vietnam from your perspective?
Yeah, so if you're aware, the new General Secretary, Mr. Tholam, I think he in the last phase of consolidating his power. So right now, the biggest agenda is to economic reform and growing the country economy and double-digit GDP growth again. So everyone is just like kind of getting back to the grind, back to business and back to economy. A lot of big projects are still taking time to get like approval, but it's coming soon, especially after the big general meeting in January 2026. So it's a bit more stable comparing, like we don't have big headline, big dramas like other neighboring countries.
Oh, saying.
No, I don't want
Singapore.
I don't want to point out to like any single country, but yeah, we are relatively more stable and just peaceful during, I would say, the last two, 3 quarters. Everyone is just so focusing on like new economic reform. We have to be like technology driven country. There will be a new law on AI this year. There's already like new sandbox on peer-to-peer lending. There's a new sandbox on digital asset, cryptocurrency platform exchange. So now crypto is recognized as a legal asset, and there's legalized framework for crypto exchange for at least 5 years. And there's a lot of talk about law on AI, and we just launched a new national data center as well, and there will be 2 more launching end of this year and early next year. So we've just been busy like executing the agenda of the new government. That is, we have to transform ourselves and adjust our economic model to more like technology driven and internal focus, domestic focus.
I think it's interesting. So I'll just name the countries that you don't want to name. Obviously, at this time, I think Thailand and Indonesia are the countries that are currently facing political and social turbulence. I think Thailand, we saw the election of a new prime minister. They've gone through multiple prime ministers over the past 6 years. So I think there's a lot of political instability, I think, perceived. Hopefully, we'll see what the outcome is, but I think there's some newspaper articles saying that people are concerned. We saw that there were street protests after the death, especially of a Gojek delivery driver, and the outflows of Indonesia capital out of Indonesia into other countries as well. So I think it's interesting to see Singapore and Vietnam are relatively calmer at this current time.
Yeah, it's calmer, but we still have our own challenges as well.
Yeah.
I think our biggest drama in Vietnam recently is the EVN, the state-owned electricity company that has like monopoly market share in Vietnam. They recently announced that they're gonna increase the price for electricity for entire business and consumer in Vietnam because their cumulative loss is about 1.8 billion USD.
That's a lot. Yeah.
So they like, we as a government entity, we have been subsidizing all of your electricity in COVID time, and now economy has stabilized and we wish to return and adjust the pricing to normal. But we were all kind of frustrated because I think they should take ownership and own the mistake. I think it's mostly like through ineffective management. That's why the loss was so big. And instead of blaming that, because of before, like they subsidized and now we have to pay for our past use electricity. Yeah. And also it's a lot of kind of bad move that they promised to a few foreign investors who were about to invest a lot in renewable energy projects in Vietnam. And EVN has promised to pay some subsidies, credit, and even give them tax incentive and tax credit to this investor. But they recently rolled back all of those as well.
What?
Yeah.
So did the projects move forward? Are they being constructed? Or?
Already in construction. They just take back the promise, take back the credit, take back the subsidies, and all of those developers together they file a complaint form to the government. So there are about like 13 of them.
Yeah.
Or like foreign investor. Yeah. Like some of the names including like Adani Energy, a few more energy big energy company conglomerate from Thailand, Netherlands, Portugal, and so on. Yeah. So we went back on our promise, and the letter is saying that the investors are very frustrated with the way EVN is running operations because they are risking losing 13 billion investment into this renewable energy project. Because, when you miss one credit, this investor also miss like payment to the bank. So the project are at risk of being bankrupt.
And that's interesting because I think last year when we talked about it, the electricity problem has been happening every year, right? Every year, I think 2 years ago, there was a energy crisis. And then this past year, they've been burning a lot of coal in order to not have a total shortage of electricity. But it's just weird that it hasn't been solved yet. I mean, it feels like crisis to crisis every time.
It hasn't been solved because, so it's a chicken and egg problem.
Right.
Our government is aggressively pushing for double-digit growth.
Yeah.
And to have those growth, you need to have foreign investment, foreign direct investment. If you want more foreign direct investment, you have to show double-digit growth. Right? So a lot of this investment and growth come from manufacturing, moving down to Vietnam, changing operation to Vietnam, because at the end of the day, we still enjoy a lower tariff and lower labor costs compared to some of the neighboring countries, as well as some data centers. Some of them are moving Vietnam as well. Not a lot of those are moving in yet. There's promise by Abu Dhabi government that they will invest a huge data center in Vietnam. And to run all of the manufacturings and data centers, you need a lot of energy. The crisis is being built on top of existing consumer electricity crisis already. Then now we have a lot more business coming in.
It's just so confusing because when you say that, obviously it's good that the government is pro-business, pro-employment, therefore you need more electricity. So that's good.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense to raise prices, although of course I'm not a Vietnamese consumer. So it's easy for me to say this from an economist perspective, which is you raise price and people will cut their wasteful spending and and then you can better manage your grid. But then why would you renege and break your promise to, foreign investors that's building capacity for your grid that helps solve for it? It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. So because EVN is poorly run, so they they under 1.8 billion loss.
Yeah.
So they cannot afford to give more subsidies to this investor.
Yeah.
And the budget is actually state capital. So they cannot risk running further loss of state capital. And this is also another theory that they promised to buy more LNG gas from the US because of the Trump negotiation.
Yeah.
And so they need to reduce their share of renewable energy project to increase LNG. But that's a theory that I don't have confirmation.
I think it's viable. I think a lot of people are promising to buy gas from America as part of the Trump administration, have tariff negotiation. I think the problem is that when you break a promise to foreign investors, everybody remembers, right?
Yeah, that's the tone in the letter.
Yeah. If you just think about it, it's like everybody feels, hey, we can do business with the Vietnamese government. Sure, state-run utility, but it's equivalent to the government.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at this, if I make this deal, obviously infrastructure deals are not a 5-year deal, right? It's a 20, it's a 50-year deal. And if you feel like the government's going to change so quickly, why would you build infrastructure again? And in 5 years' time, when you're going out looking for energy investors, when the proposal goes up to the investment committee of the energy conglomerate, everyone's going to be like, well, don't you remember when that Thai conglomerate got totally suckered and they lost money on that project?
That's the tone in the letter. So the investors are all very frustrated. But at the same time, there's another kind of discussion with Russia and Japan to reinstate the nuclear energy project. So there was a discussion about a new nuclear energy project, but it was stopped. It was halted in 2016. Recently, the conversation is picked up again because, the new government is pushing for energy independence and economic growth again. So they recently talked to Russia and Japan again, but I'm not sure. Their goal is very aggressive. Their goal is to have the first energy, nuclear reactor by 2030 operation. So it's only 5 more years.
I think lots of countries in Southeast Asia are talking about nuclear energy, right? Singapore has announced they signed a civilian nuclear research agreement with the Biden administration. They kept it going. They're now announcing that they're hiring for nuclear safety engineers and the institute. So all the signals are being waved that I think Singapore is going to go nuclear. Indonesia is saying if Singapore has nuclear energy, we should also have nuclear energy. I think the Indonesians feel like they're not so much on board because first of all, Indonesia has
coal.
Yeah, there is so much coal. So if you have so much coal at home, do you really need nuclear energy other than if you think about it from a national security perspective? Then maybe, it makes sense. But so there's so much coal. And then two is actually Indonesia, I think the engineering culture, I think people are worried about safety because people trust Singapore engineers to do that work. And then thirdly, of course, you probably want your nuclear reactor to be a place that is not like geographically, seismically active. Right? Indonesia has a lot of, volcano earthquakes and tectonic faults versus Singapore, benefits from not being impacted by any earthquakes or tsunamis, right? Which is important for nuclear safety.
Yeah. I think because EVN is state-owned, state-run, so it's very hard for them to balance all of the objective. They have to also work with Mr. Trump. They have to work with Japan, Russia, and now they have to work with this like renewable energy group that have like Thailand and Philippines, Netherlands, and India.
It's going to be tricky because if you are like an external foreign energy player, even if you're nuclear or LNG, you're also going to look at what they did to the renewables and you're like, what if they, what if the Vietnamese government changes its mind again and, I don't know, drops nuclear or drops gas, as energy.
So I think maybe they have to just give some market share to private companies. Price their utility. I don't know why they haven't done it. It's also talk in one of the agenda in economic reform that we will rebalance the economy to have more private companies. Because right now a lot of state-owned companies are running the economy. But this is one of the first few issue and problem they have to actually solve.
I think Singapore's energy solutions are quite interesting because Singapore has so much oil and gas because it's the kind of oil and gas hub for Southeast Asia. But at the same point of time, even Singapore had to do a moratorium on data center construction because they was using so much electricity. And so, in fact, what's interesting now is that data centers are not really being built in Singapore now, right? They're being built in Malaysia or Vietnam. Sorry, your Instagram's not working because you have electricity brownout.
We want to, but we have to solve our electricity energy crisis first.
So I think privatization, obviously, every country in the world debates this thing, which is like public run, blah, blah, versus, privatization. Nobody has really solved it as well.
How is Singapore running it?
In my head, I was thinking about it. I had to do my research. Wish I had, suddenly the editor's going to put this like flashing facts on the screen.
Okay.
What I know for sure is that I think there's definitely a lot of government dynamics. So right now, Flux is the Singapore champion in water purification. So it's doing a lot of the, reverse osmosis, desalination, kind of like water purification plants. They're currently went bankrupt because they basically built a plant in Singapore. And basically they had a power generation piece combined with the plant. And from Hyflux's perspective, they felt there was guarantees by the state about the price that they could sell at. And what happened, long story short, was the market liberalized or they let the price fluctuate. But long story short, Hyflux was basically underwater because their electricity plant could only produce at a certain price. That was too expensive versus the market price, which doesn't let them make money on the overall plant. And then Hyflux went bankrupt. Right now, there's a big court case between the various parties, which was this sufficiently disclosed? So there's a big court case and different parties are having lawsuits for each other. Not easy. Not easy to build infrastructure as well. And so, Singapore doesn't have any energy brownouts. And so far, nobody really complains about electricity prices.
Have they increased it at any time recently?
I think that electricity hasn't really gone up as huge. Because I think there was obviously a big crisis after the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Russian oil went off the market and everybody reconfigured their approach. And I think Singapore officially joined some of the sanctions and so forth.
Russia.
But from an energy perspective, oil is a commodity, right? So in the sense that as long as it flows here and there, the net price didn't really fluctuate for Singapore because all the oil is flowing in and out. So not a huge dynamic. But I think Singapore is a bit constrained because it's promised to go net zero, so net carbon neutral.
Well, we promised to do the same, and we are now cutting short all the renewable energy projects.
I don't think the promise is a promise. But I mean, for Singapore, they really made a promise because Singapore's argument is like, it's an island. So if you allow global warming to happen all the way, then Singapore would be underwater. So there's a little bit more
urgent.
urgent and more incentive to do so.
Yeah.
Singapore's like busy building sand barriers all across the edges of Singapore, making Singapore higher with sand.
Yes.
But that's why it's more serious about the net carbon neutral. But Singapore doesn't have space for wind farms because there's no wind. Solar cell is quite sunny in Singapore, but it's very cloudy and rains all the time. So it can be doable, but not perfect. And then you might have much coal in Singapore. So we're back to oil and gas, which of course plays well to Singapore's hub. So the only other path is nuclear, right? Everybody I think that's what everybody keeps talking and over again. And so I think that's the debate. Of course, the problem is that Singapore's so small, right? So a lot of the population is kind of like, where would you put the nuclear reactor? I think that'll be the civilian point.
Or just follow the model, like the small nuclear reactor one.
Yeah, but then even so, like, where would you put it still, right? I mean, I think people watch HBO, they watch Chernobyl. So even say it's a small modular nuclear reactor, the public perception is not.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, Vietnam, we have the same promise, but obviously we didn't honor it. Yeah, we have other things in the negotiation tables.
Yeah, buying planes as well, Boeing. So let's talk quickly about the tariffs, right? Because, I think Vietnam is at 20%. And, it's not as bad as what we thought it was going to be, which was
46%.
Yeah, 46%. So I guess, if you have 46% tariff, then now you're back to 20%. It doesn't feel so bad, I guess.
Yeah, it's not the best outcome that we were hoping for, but it's still good enough that everyone can go back to like business as usual.
Yeah, it's like survivable, right?
Like, at least FDI is back to the flow.
Yeah.
I think so.
More predictable. Yeah. I think Vietnam did a good job at moving very aggressively. They were one of the first to cut the deal. So I thought it was quite impressive. The Vietnamese government kind of like working very hard. I think Singapore, basically, we got 10%.
Yeah.
And then we never got anything else. And Singapore actually buys more from America than America buys from Singapore, right? So actually it's a trade surplus. But in America, actually, by law, has a free trade agreement. And it's still got a 10% tariff.
Yeah, it's a bit irrational because we were discussing for like 10%. And outside, our government already thought that we reached that 10% agreement already. And then suddenly, President Trump just announced on his social media that we reached 20%. And so we were actually dumbfounded, but hey, 20% is better than 46%, and it's still lower than India and China.
And what's India and China from your perspective?
I think India was, I don't remember exact number, but it's way more than 30%.
Yeah, and Switzerland is also above 30% as well. Switzerland's kind of question mark.
They don't even do anything, right?
I mean, I think that watches, obviously, they have to go. I think the issue for Switzerland is they're doing watches, which is luxury. They're doing pharmaceuticals, which is high value. And they're actually doing gold. And so the problem is gold flows are a huge component, but then it's not really a transaction in terms of like that, right? It's like American investors are buying the gold that's being refined. So it's actually kind of like an unfair. I mean, you zoom out on a number, it looks like a big trade deficit. But then actually, if you strip out gold from it, there's actually,
But I would say we only care mostly about India. That is our biggest competitor in terms of getting FDI and manufacturing relocation, reshoring. And India ended up with a higher tariff. So we can be a little bit peaceful here.
Yeah, exactly. So you're like, the negotiator's pretty. I thought he was got 10%. He won by his phone. He's all 20%.
Yeah.
I guess all of them must have gone drinking that night after that.
I think like Thailand and Indonesia, we don't really compete head to head because we have different kind of manufacturing. So we really just care about like, are we lower than India at least?
Yeah, it makes sense actually. And, I think recently was Vietnam at the recent Xi Jinping military parade. And
we were there.
You were there?
Yeah.
I mean, Modi was there from India. Although he worked hard to be there before. So he wasn't officially at the main thing. He came a day before, he left a day before.
Oh, and on top of the tariff, India and China have additional tariff from being a BRICS member.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
For taking Russian oil and gas.
Yeah. So we dodged that because we are only a partner of BRICS, not a member. We selectively choose not to be a member, even though we were invited to join as a member. But we know, like, that's too bold. And that's like we're literally taking side by being a member. So we only choose to be a partner. So we did not get hit by double tariff.
Yeah, some diplomats like, phew. Thank goodness we didn't make that decision 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Partner only.
Yeah, partner only.
Yeah.
No, I think it's quite interesting because there's that huge debate happening right now. So when you say that, you know, there's more certainty now for the manufacturers who are moving or expanding in Vietnam.
I think.
What are we talking about? We're talking about Apple, obviously. We're talking about the Koreans for the electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about what? The AirPods that are being manufactured.
Yeah.
So how does that, how do you see it?
I think Samsung has come down, like Nike's come down, a lot of furniture that you see in the US and Europe actually like made in Vietnam. Like all the big furniture companies, you know, stay put, stay where they are. There might be even more like flow of manufacturing from China moving into Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah, because now it's kind of codified and locked in.
It's clear. I mean, nothing is ever clear under Trump.
And when you think about, you know, the next few months, what are things that people are looking out for from your perspective? If you're like a Vietnamese business person, what are things that you're looking out for? One is maybe how they resolve the energy debate. Anything else that's really kind of like people are kind of keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to avoid being labeled as a transshipment. Yeah, so you need to hire local, build local, and you have to show your supply chain through and through that prove that you're not a Chinese company. You sure, like some of your components might be from China, but this is not a Chinese transshipment or Chinese reassembling hub.
Right.
Yeah, because if they find out that you are a transshipment hub, you are added like 40% tariff. Yeah. So that's the biggest question all the manufacturing business owners have right now.
Do you have a startup that's going to like do that labeling or something?
Data labeling?
I don't know. I mean, there must be some sort of like credential way to like, I don't know, mark off or verify.
Actually, I know someone solving that. I didn't invest, but I think like that can be one of the areas that they can tackle pretty well.
Yeah, I think so, because it's just so hard to do all the counting. I mean, like this part, that part, and then also there's different rules. And I guess now every country has their own certain thing. Was like a certain percentage must be built here.
Yes.
A certain percentage must be built there, but you can't have any components from there.
Like, you have to show like supply chain, like transparency.
Yeah, and then, you know, you're buying a widget from your supplier, but then what steel is he using, I don't know, to manufacture the widget? You also don't know, right? So
I think there's a good space, opportunity for a startup to join, like logistic, originality, transparency.
And I guess my last question I have for you is, when you're looking at all the startups, obviously now it's obviously winter in Southeast Asia. Any thoughts about how startups are reacting or technology is reacting within Southeast Asia? No, I mean, especially for Vietnam.
I think for Vietnam, I think we got the worst behind us. Yeah. So it all can be only up from here.
Touch wood.
Yeah, touch wood. And I just closed a new investment, like a share. It took a bit longer than we hoped. It took 5 months to close a deal, which is kind of long for a deal. But as long as they like working on the same problem that the government is like diving to solve for, this should be the right time and like best time to solve and build a startup actually. Because the government is like supporting them left and right. Like the government, the National Data Center and Ministry of Public Security invite them to be their like advisor, because obviously they are Ministry of Public Security, don't know about data analytics, machine learning as well as this startup does. So yeah, they got a lot of favorable treatment from the government actually.
Sorry, this is the company you invested in. Is it
yeah.
public yet?
It's not public, but I can just say that they are helping the government with the national data legal framework.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Now we should share about it the next time once the news comes out. Yeah, I think one question I think that the Singapore government has is this, you know, with this Southeast Asia winter, how positioned is Singapore as an economy, right? And I think there's an interesting piece, because Southeast Asia and Singapore, the government, you know, has 3 parts of it, right? Which one is from a funding perspective and legal incorporation perspective, that's one. 2 is from a jobs perspective. And the third is maybe from a innovation and growth perspective, right? And so I think the first thing is, I think Singapore's strategy of becoming the Delaware or the legal incorporation framework for Southeast Asia companies has paid off well, right? So your funds are still located in Singapore, your VCC structure, your family offices. So I think people feel comfortable with Singapore as an ecosystem to set up a financial fund, right? Super returns, F1, so forth. Okay, so I think that's done well. I think the tricky part is there is a jobs component and there's an economic growth component. Jobs component of finally is just like, right now, Singapore is facing both obviously headwinds on economy slowing down. And also for the first time, there's actually more youth unemployment, which is very rare. So normally Singapore has struggled with unemployment with obviously the elderly, the people who have to reskill, people who are in, kind of like industries that are shrinking or lower education. But this is for the first time youth unemployment is higher because, multinational corporations are shrinking. A lot of these US MNCs downsizing because they're using AI, they become more efficient. They hire less engineers in Singapore. Yeah. So the MNCs are shrinking, and so the youth, they normally absorb a lot of youth jobs. So that's a big problem for them. And the third piece, of course, is more from a economy perspective, is industrial policy. Is you want to see startups. And I think for Singapore, there's a little bit of a barbell in the sense that you have your government corporations, which are vertically integrated conglomerate champions that are good at what they're doing, but they tend to be more the conventional industries, like, shipping or oil and gas. So they're doing okay. And then there's a lot of small, medium enterprises like coffee shops, your cleaning services, domestic businesses, first gen, second gen, third gen.
Yeah.
But I think there's almost like a missing middle of like the high growth, national priority kind of startups.
Yeah. I think in this sense, Vietnam is actually following US playbook, investing in energy and defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of that, AI, I guess, application.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the newly launched national data center, there will be like new AI law, new like data security guidance.
Yeah.
So the startup that is working in those areas, gonna do well, in my opinion. Recently, I also forgot to share the Credit Bureau of Vietnam for consumer also recently got hacked. So a lot of people got leaked information, like confidential information got leaked.
Yeah,
like how much they owe, like what kind of debt they have. Yeah.
So if I check for Valerie Vu, will I find some data?
You might. That's government-owned credit bureau. They try to hide it.
Oh no.
So the government tried to hide the news for a couple of days, and then everyone just like talking about it, and they finally like came to the TV, national TV, that like the credit bureau that got hacked, but stay safe that your credit card information is not leaked. So people were afraid that their credit card information also got hacked, but actually that's not true. They only got hacked like your personal information and the amount of debt that you have right now. Yeah. So only those information.
Only that information.
Yeah, only that information.
Only that information.
But your credit card information is not linked.
Yeah.
So that's what the government was.
At least you won't get more purchases or more like that, but still.
So like they really have to ramp up on like defense, energy, and AI, like especially cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think Singapore is also facing that issue. The Singapore government is going all out against because a lot of people are targeting Singaporeans for scams because Singaporeans are very. You saw.
Yeah,
it's like the biggest net outflow of cash is like Singapore as a scam target because Singapore is a very high trust society.
Yeah.
So everybody trusts each other. They leave their wallets on the table.
Especially like love scam, right?
Yeah. This love scam or I always remember that my mom actually, she got a scam call, and basically she picked up the phone and she basically heard somebody say, hey, we kidnapped your son and give us your money. Otherwise we're going to kill him and everything. My mom was like sweating and getting really anxious after she's hearing this. And in the background, she's hearing somebody shouting and screaming and saying, help, help in Chinese and everything. And then she was just very worried and everything. And after that, she was like, then she paused and she's like, wait a moment. The guy in the background is shouting and screaming for help. He's too fluent in Chinese. That bad. But so then my mom just switched it off and then she told me about that. And when I heard the story, I was like, proud of her because I was like, thank God you didn't get scammed.
Yeah.
But also I felt quite ashamed because
go back to your Chinese school.
I was like, is my Chinese that bad?
Yeah. I think so.
I can't shout for help in Chinese.
Go back to Chinese school, Jeremy.
So I was just like, oh my God. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy that, so I'm working on my Chinese this semester at Tsinghua University and all this other stuff. But the point of it was just like, even my mom's getting these attack calls. And even for me, I actually, I used to accept people on LinkedIn, but now I'm just like, I give up. I just said, if I don't know you for sure, I just put no, I'm so sorry. The problem is like, they started generating all these AI bots
Yeah.
profiles to scrape the stuff and everything. And I remember I saw this like LinkedIn profile, and it was like this lady who was obviously a bot, and obviously is a beautiful woman. And but you just look at you just click in, and then you see the
weird
the work is like they did this, and somehow they jumped to like director of a bank, and you're just like, no way, like you can't jump like this from a Chinese, university to a Singapore bank. Like, is this, and you can't do it in one go and be this young. Doesn't make sense. Like, it just didn't make sense. And I was like, obviously it's a scam. But I remember I saw like 4 mutual connections, and I was like, who am I? Who am I? And I clicked on it. I was just scolding them mentally in my head because when I had almost accepted it, because it was like, it says 4 mutual connections. So it's like, oh, whatever. Because it used to be like a high signal trust.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, you suckers. Like, you just clicked on her because, she's a pretty face.
It's just, they just didn't care either.
Yeah, it could be, I mean, it's probably an accident, but, but it's funny is that, it's like the image is like way too beautiful.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and then I saw 4 mutual connections, like, and after that, I was like, after I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm just going to put no to everybody because all these bots. So sad. So sad.
Yeah.
I remember I used to people could just add each other. Now nobody.
LinkedIn has gotten a bit weird this day.
Yeah, and also a lot of like bot generated messages and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Oh well. Well, on that note, thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.